So today we are going to be installing accessories. So we have a long block essentially. We have heads bolted to a block. Cams are all shimmed in, intakes and exhausts are all within spec. So now we've got to start putting on some parts. We've got our oil pump, we've got our water pump, we've got this chunk of aluminum that other things bolt to, and we've got boxes of bolts, many boxes of bolts. So we have to make it all come together and equal one ready to run motor. Pitter patter, let's get at her. So with the oil pump, we have to apply a very light amount of silicone to this outside because these don't have a gasket. And then there's an O-ring that goes right here that seals up against this. And that's all that seals this to the motor. So we have to be perfect as far as getting the right amount of silicone without any overage. So I'm going to use my nifty silicone trick and I'll show you that again. Just an ever so slight amount, so we're going to basically get everything here. Super light. I'm going to go to the outside. I'm going to use my finger to bring it to the inside. Not a lot, as you can see. And then the old take a finger, get it a little damp, and this stuff just spreads right out. Now it looks like there's a ton, but once we get it all spread out, it'll be just about the right amount. And then, once we're done with that, we'll go ahead and clean off any excess with the paper towel. And there might be just a tiny bit of excess. Not a lot. And you want to use good silicone with this. You don't want to use cheap crap, and don't use the orange stuff. This doesn't facilitate the orange high temp stuff. This is the, I'll show you in a second. I'll show you what we got here. Just get this all smeared around. You can see it doesn't take much. That tiny, tiny little bead, that wasn't even like 1/8 of an inch. Enough to cover with some excess everything here. Boomski. A little bit. Let's clean this up a little bit on this side here. A little thin over here, so I just want to. Yeah, there's like almost no excess. That's pretty good. So this is 3-bond 1217H. This is good stuff, gray. It's extremely good silicone. It's a little bit expensive, so we try to use as little as possible, like I said. So now we need to find the O-ring. I'm going to go grab the O-ring, and we're going to clean the surface on the block. You always want to make sure you have a clean surface. We just spray a rag with a little bit of brake clean, and we just make sure. I'd already done this to the oil pump itself. Now we're good and clean there. And that is setting up. We only have a few minutes before that's going to be too far set up to really stick well. So I'm going to go ahead and get that O-ring and get it in. Here is oil pump O-ring. Just going to set that little guy right there. Beautiful. Oops. We've lost focus, Captain. All right. Oil pump O-rings in place. Now let's get this oil pump in place. Here we go. Now you have to spline it onto the oil pump. So you have to spline the oil pump onto the crankshaft. And it only is going to go on one way, so let's look at which direction. There's two little notches in the side of the crankshaft, and they correspond inside here. So it looks like they're kind of straight up and down. So set that. It's pretty close. Place. There's a couple of dowel pins that are kind of holding it from just going all the way in. Slide this forward. So we're going to see if we can get our hardware to kind of start. Could kind of try to tap it in place a little bit maybe. The old soft hammer, just going to give it a little tap, tap, tap. Just very lightly tapping it into place. Now, start all of our hardware here. These were the same length. Those were the ones on the outside. We're just going to start them all, and then we'll torque them all. Then we'll move on to the next piece. It's all snug down. Now we're just going to go ahead and torque this. Got our set for 5 foot-pounds. I know that's not even very much. There's probably an order you're supposed to torque these in. I'm not too concerned. The fact that I'm even torquing them is probably overkill for this, but alright, they're on there. Oil pump is installed. Next, the water pump. Water pump does have a gasket, no O-rings. Kind of funny looking gasket, sits on there like that. So we're just going to go ahead and check to make sure this is the used water pump, but it felt like it was fairly recently replaced. So we've got our hardware here for it. Little trick, if you put 2 bolts in, kind of hold them with your fingers. You can set the gasket on and it'll stay in place. That way when you set it on there, it doesn't fall down. It's kind of a pain in the butt sometimes. This goes this way. So there's a thermostat in there. It's the stock thermostat. It looks a little crusty. Probably pull that out here in a little bit. Maybe I should have put this on before I put the timing cover on, but oh well. I think it'll still go on. Yeah, it'll go on. There are little, we talked about metal on metal noises in an earlier video. I didn't really show it on these, I'll show it on this piece. But there are little isolators between these pieces that help prevent any sort of metal on metal contact from causing vibration. And that's pretty important, especially as you start really getting into stuff, because that's going to cause knock. And even though the EMS we're running doesn't have knock protection, still a little bit nervous about that. But we'll just have to make sure we tune it really well. Monitor stuff. and we should be okay. Check the torque on these, and then move on to the next step. All right, these ones are 8.7, and they want you to do it in a circle, and they want you to go around twice. So we'll set this guy up to 8.7. Come on, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8.7. And they start with this one, and they go in a circle. Again, probably overkill, but whatever. 8.7. Find this little down here. Hang a good spot. Seven. 8.7. Small window with all this stuff on here. 8.5, 8.7. Got a little high on that one. 8.94. It's not that high. Alright. Go around one more time because that's what the book said to do. I think it's because the first time around it crushes the gasket, and the second time, yeah, see that one took a little bit more. I almost always torque things twice. I'm sure someone will say that that's the wrong way to do it. See, that one that seemed high before was not. There you go. Alright, 8.7. Properly torqued. 8.74. Ugh! So close. Alright, look at that. It's starting to look like a Subaru. We still got this little chunk of metal. So okay, bolts onto these here. And this supports the tensioner, which is a very integral part of the timing system. You can see it has a hardened steel rod here, and that's what the tensioner rides against. So, we're going to install this thing. And it sits right in here, like so. The engine builder has arrived. Say hi, Andy. Alright, this is about it. I'm going to go ahead and finish this video off. But after we install that, I gotta find the hardware. It's in the box somewhere. It'll be time for some timing components. So, alright, we're just gonna keep on installing parts. So, this is the good old Coolant crossover. Sits on a motor just like so. These are really expensive, so you want to make sure you don't break them. It has a coolant temp sensor in it, although we're not going to use this particular coolant temp sensor. So I'm going to go ahead and yank that out. I don't like that it's got a 12 volt that crosses over inside there, and when these fail, it'll send 12 volts back across the ground side, and it can smoke the circuit on your computer. I've actually seen it a couple of times on standalone cars. It's not ideal, so need new O-rings for this, and then we'll put it on. Oh yeah, I just remembered something. I was going to put the bolts in here and remembered this was stripped out right here. So it looks like it's got good threads a little bit deeper in there.
which just means that instead of using a little short bolt, we're going to use a little bit longer one and hope that it bites enough. Yep. So that's fine, and this one's a little bit wonky. Good stuff. I love it when things are messed up, and I think both these ones are good. It's a downside to reusing the block. It's just all the weird things. This one's also stripped out, pretty boogered. There was a couple more that were pretty boogered on this block. It's really unfortunate, but it is what it is. This one's pretty messed. One of these top ones is not so good either. Alright, so I got two different sizes of slightly longer bolts, and then I've got the originals. So what we're going to do is put the three, as I break it, put the three that are good in there, and then we're going to try to thread that last one in, and see if the short one will torque down. Hope that the short one torques down, and if not, then we'll go with the next longer one, and if then that doesn't torque down, then we will end up going with a good old-fashioned helicoil. So I feel that feels alright. This comes out of battery, which is fine. We'll go ahead and give this the torque. Let's see if she torques down or not. Yep. It torques. Watching someone torque bolts on a motor has got to be the most interesting thing in the world. So I got a little ahead of myself and I forgot to install the AVCS oil feed lines on both sides of the motor. This side was easy, I just had to move the crossover tube to get this one on. But this one I had to pull the cam gear back off, and then so I could flex the timing cover out of the way to get that bottom bolt in. So unfortunately, a little bit of a setback. So it happens when you get ahead of yourself. I also got the dipstick in, these water pipes in, the PCV crossover in, even though I might cut the PCV crossover off and do something totally different. But it's at least installed for now. Yeah. Just because I really want to see it. Spacers. Gaskets, spacers. This is another one of those topics of controversy, but whether you need gaskets with the spacers. Because I'm running the really big spacers, I'm going to run gaskets on it. Some people just use a little bit of silicone RTV, and that works as well. But I'm going to run gaskets. Now, the next thing is whether or not I run into an issue with fitment here. And I do, but I modified one of these earlier. Modified. It should go right on with the power steering piece here. See, the power steering bracket fits just fine. People were saying that it wouldn't fit very well with this this crossover, but it does fit. So this one was clearly made correctly. I had to modify that just a little bit on the TGV piece. I'm going to go ahead and just cut the corner of that gasket off, and I'm going to gonna set the manifold on and just kind of bolt it down real quick. Yep, so I still need to tighten it all up, but man, look at that, it's starting to look pretty good. You can see that all fits, which people were skeptical of. Yeah, it's gonna look awesome. So I'm gonna need to do something here. I got a fuel line and a coolant line trying to share the same space. I actually think I'm gonna cut this down here, or at least bend it. For the coolant overflow, which I don't really have. I left this one here just for it so I can try to make a bracket for a coolant overflow, but I'm not 100% sure how I want to do that yet since the manifold is reversed. It's looking alright. Alright, it's time to time. We're going to time this motor. Nothing fancy on the timing. We're not doing any like cam to green or anything. We're just going to set it all to factory specs. So we got to get it turned around, the motor at TDC, get all the cams at TDC, and then put the timing belt on. I'm going to start by just putting the motor where we want it here. It actually already was pretty dang close. There we go. We could check with the dial indicator actually on cylinder 1. We wanted to get it dead on perfect, but we don't really have any adjustability, so getting it dead on perfect isn't really gonna matter so much. This timing belt kit, we're using the Gates timing belt kit. It does include some Loctite. Use my teeth. I'm gonna show my mom. It does include a little bit of Loctite for the bolts, for the tensioner, and some of the other bolts. So we're just going to put a little Loctite on this little guy here. We are using the Gates tensioner, and we are not using the Gates little tiny baby idler. We actually have an OEM Subaru idler. If I can find it. We have the OEM Subaru idler, which is a little bit higher quality. It's an NTN from Japan, and these tend to hold up a little bit better over time. So we're going to go ahead and get this all installed. Give her a little what for on this, a little Loctite. You have one of these come off, and I always joke about you're not going to have a good time. Well, you're really not going to have a good time if that comes off. Start with that one, and then we'll put the rest of them on as we put the belt on. Oh, I want the cogged pulley. Sorry. Cogged pulley. And then the rest of them go on after that goes on. CP idler. Get those just briefly snug. Then we'll go grab our torque wrench. Torque them down in a second. But we're just going to snug them up for now. There's a good chance we're going to have to take all this off before long. So we want to line up our cam gears here. Come on now. Flip. I hate it when they flip. Dot goes here. cool thing about a new timing belt is it has marks that correspond exactly with cam gears themselves. So you can get it right on the first time without a lot of extra effort. Go ahead and put that bottom one on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the belt onto the timing mark, have it wrapped around. I'm going to use the belt to pull myself, snap the cam over. This thing's going to jump. There we go. This one needs to come way up. They like to jump out of place. And I totally lost it on that gear. Got the bottom one where I want it. Now we just got to get the top one back. Two filters. Stayed on though. Stay lined up. We jumped. Ah, that's fun. Jumped off the crank here, but that one will be easy to get back on. Once we get these two lined up, it should be pretty easy to get it all sorted out. The water pump. Looks good there, looks good there. Idler's on. This one back over to the crank. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the wrench and turn just a little bit so that it'll come on there a little bit easier. Yep. Alright. Now I need to put a cog pulley in. Pretty dang close. So the cog pulley here. Running away. So this is still on our mark up here, which is excellent. And we're good and loose down there. Now we're just going to try to slide this onto our cam gear here. And we're right on our mark there as well. So we're still looking really good. Just got to put in one more idler here, and here, oops, need a little bit of blue on that one. Down. And everyone should play nice. That's what's fun about doing timing belt with new components. It's pretty straightforward. Alright, so we're just going to double check all our marks. So let's just double check all our marks. We're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. Over here. We're good. Yep. And so if we look, we're not lined up here. We're not lined up there, but that's because we're not lined up on the middle anymore. So what we're going to do is I'm going to torque all these guys, and then we're going to rotate it around, get the middle back at TDC, and make sure everything lines up. All right, I went ahead and torqued all of the idlers. Now we're going to pull the pin. It's my favorite step. Ugh. Pull the pin, throw the grenade. All right, let's turn this beast over. Let's let her tension up. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's get everyone over here lined up. Looking pretty good. Yeah, so we're pretty much right on the mark there. Everyone else, well, these are a little bit off. Let's see. I feel like we're a tooth off. Sadly. Everyone's all lined up. So why would that be off just a hair? That's the real question. Grenade is pulled. I think what we need to do is grab the dial indicator, because we did line everybody up on their marks. So what we're going to have to do is check and see. There's a couple of things that could be going on. One of them is we may need to use the adjustable pulleys instead of the factory pulleys here in order to get this within perfect spec. But we also might need to just check on the dial indicator that we're not. Well, let me go around one more time and see what we got. Because when I get these ones here lined up, it's 2 rotations. So we're pretty much golden there. Here we're golden. But why are we, well, I guess we're only off by like a hair over here. Super hard to see that mark. Yeah, that's looking pretty solid. So I think the tensioner hadn't quite pumped up yet. We'll go around a couple more times, just for good measure. Let that tensioner pump up. Motor feels really nice coming over. Looks pretty good. I think I like it. Yep. Looks pretty solid. Good stuff. All right, so we're basically ready to put everything else on now. That's awesome. When you're doing valve cover gaskets, put the silicone down. All you need is a tiny little bit there and there on the half moons, and then just a touch here and there and there and there. If you need any more silicone than that, you screwed up. Let me show you why. All right, we've got a new gasket on our valve cover. We're going to set it down, and the only place where we really need that extra little bit is right in the corners and then across the half moons. Now, what are we going to do to make this seal? Well, the step a lot of people forget is what's actually sealing it are these shouldered bolts. And these bolts that have these shoulders on them, they have a very specific amount that they're going to go down in before they seat on the bottom shoulder. So if it's not putting basically pressure on the valve cover itself, then it's not going to seal. So how do you make sure that it's putting adequate pressure on the valve cover? You always get new grommets. A lot of people get new gaskets and they put the gaskets on and they still leak because they're reusing worn out grommets. So here is an old busted grommet right there. It's already been compressed. And here is a new hotness grommet. Hasn't been compressed. Hold them next to each other. It's going to be hard to see here, but basically one is considerably thicker than the other. And so when you use new grommets, you get a much better, a lot more pressure on the valve cover itself, which lets the valve cover gasket do the work and not silicone. All right, now that we're all torqued down, you can see we don't have a massive protrusion of silicone, a little bit of paper towel, but it's not puking out everywhere. But this is gonna seal up perfectly. You can see in there in the very, very corner, just a tiny bit came out, which is perfect. Same thing, won't be able to see those ones, but it's looking pretty good. It's starting to look like a motor, guys. Starting to look like a motor. All right, time for the moment of turbo truthiness. So one of the tricks on these returns, the oil return, is to put the clasp to the front of the turbo. For some reason that just makes them feel better. Oops. Right on. Oh, we need a gasket. JK, we're not putting this on yet. Need our gasket. Let's take that back off. Put our gasket on. Fits perfect. Right down onto the return. Voila, turbocharger is fitted. Now we just got to tighten up the oil return hose clamp. Alright, we have a turbo on this motor. Let's put some hardware on it. Flange 1, flange 2. Just tighten those down. Much easier to do outside the car than in the car, but it's still not too bad. Subaru turbos aren't terribly difficult to install. And just like that, tighten the front one. I'll have to go get an extension, but there it is. Tomioka TD06-20G is what we're running with to start out. Oh, I had this little oil fill cap, matches everything else. Look at that. Would you look at that? Now, I did decide I didn't like how the timing was sitting. It was close, but not close enough. So, luckily, put that on there, and now it's going to fix it. I'm just kidding. What is this? These are pretty trick. These are replacement idlers from LIC. And what these do these are going to let us get the timing perfectly aligned. They're basically adjustable idlers, and they go in and you can use that to rotate them around to give it more or less tension, which using the pair of them is going to help us bring this mark back to right where we want it and get everybody perfectly lined up. We're only like a quarter tooth off, but I'd rather it was dead on than even a quarter tooth off. So I'm gonna put these on there. Fancy part. That'll be a different video, but I mostly just wanted to show you that. Anyway, that's it. It's together. It's pretty badass.